Hey, distance learners. So today you're going to take some notes on the Bill of Rights. If you want to make things a little quicker and easier, I put it like a little note document for you guys. You can just type directly into that document. Otherwise, if you prefer taking your own notes on your own sheet of paper, that's fine too. First, we're going to talk about articles versus amendments. Articles are the original parts of the Constitution. There are 7 total. Amendments are changes or additions to the Constitution, and there are 27 of those. If you need more time to write that down, put the video on pause, push play when you are ready. 7 articles of the Constitution. Just worry about the first 3. Don't really worry about the rest. So the Constitution lays out the structure of our government. Number 1, the first article says, here's what the legislative branch is, here's what they're responsible for doing. So the legislative branch is made up of the Senate and the House, and they're responsible for making laws. The executive branch is article number 2. That's made up of the president and his cabinet, and their job is to go ahead and pass laws and be commander-in-chief of the army and kind of do various leadership things around the government. Third article is the judicial branch. That's made up of the Supreme Court, and they are kind of there to check to make sure that the actions and laws passed by the government are constitutional. The fourth article is talking about states, that they need to respect each other's laws. So you as a Minnesotan have to respect Wisconsin laws, and all states are equal. The fifth article talks about amendments. It's like a how to ratify amendments section. The sixth article talks about department, supremacy, and oaths. The important parts of this one are that the Constitution is the law of the land and nobody's above the law, and members of the government have to take an oath. So all the way down from like House of Representatives members to the president, they have to take an oath when they go into office that they're going to do the best for our country and an allegiance to our country. The seventh one is ratification. This is just like the who signed it of the Constitution. All right, if you're using my little notes section, they have those little boxes. This first bullet point will go in the first box under the First Amendment. This second one will go in the second box under the First Amendment. So going from left to right, first box on the left, first box on the right. Remember, you just have to write down the bolded or underlined information. The First Amendment gives you freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, which means that you can go ahead and get together and protest, and the right to petition the government. So that means that you can criticize the government. You can tell them what they're doing wrong, which is something that we kind of take for granted in this country. A lot of other countries, you're not allowed to criticize the government. The reason why the framers wanted to do that is because they just got away from king, and so they wanted protection for those basic liberties. If you need more time to write that down, put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. All right, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. That just means that people have the right to own firearms with some limitations, of course, for safety. The background, ever since this has came out, people have debated on whether that means individuals should all have their own firearms or if it just is members of militias or armies. Push pause if you need more time to write it down. Push play if you are ready. Okay. The Fourth Amendment is all about law enforcement. So it says that law enforcement needs probable cause to arrest or search people. So probable cause could be a search warrant. It could be an arrest warrant. It could also be just like suspicion. So for example, if a police officer pulled over a car for speeding and they got up to the car and it just smelled like alcohol, they could go ahead and ask the driver. That would be probable cause to do a DUI test. Background, so this was reaction to several cases in England where they were kind of arresting people and taking their property for no clear reason. If you need more time to write that down, go ahead and put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. The Fifth and Sixth Amendment, they're often cited together in the Supreme Court, so we're going to go ahead and put them together. They're kind of like peanut butter and jelly. All right. What these talk about are rights of criminal defendants. So if anyone were ever to commit a crime or be accused of a crime. So criminal defendants have the right not to speak. If you've ever seen like cop shows where they say you have the right to remain silent, that comes from the Fifth and Sixth Amendment. If anyone ever says like I plead the Fifth, if you're asking something that makes them uncomfortable, they're referring to the Fifth Amendment where they have the right not to speak. It also says you can't be tried twice for the same offense. So, for example, if you were to rob a bank and go to court and they said you are not guilty, you couldn't be taken back to court to try to get you to be accused of guilty again. Of course, if you robbed a bank and then robbed a different bank, so if you robbed a bank and got tried and found not guilty, and then you were accused of robbing a different bank, you could still be brought back for bank robbery because it would be a whole different bank that you're being accused of robbing. If that makes sense. If not, let me know. It also says that you can't be denied due process of the law. Due process of the law is kind of a hard thing to define, but think of it kind of like a checklist. Like they're going through making sure they're hitting all of the steps to make sure that the criminal defendants or those accused get all of the rights that are listed out. Okay, so they're not skipping any steps. So due process is just like a checklist to make sure that they're doing everything that they need to. So if you ever hear anybody like your American government teacher say, we have to do this just for our due process, they mean we have to do this just to make sure that we get it crossed off and it's like covered. All right. This last one is really important. It says that you have a right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. They wanted a speedy trial because in England, sometimes you could wait years and years and years for your case to be processed, and that would affect your entire life just waiting for your case to be processed. So they wanted a speedy trial, meaning you're not waiting years and years and years. A public trial to make sure that you were getting that due process of the law, and an impartial jury, meaning that the people who are deciding your fate aren't going to be biased towards or against you. They take this really seriously when they interview people who are called for jury duty. They want to make sure that there's no connection or bias to that case at all. If you need more time to write that down, go ahead and pause the video, push play when you're ready. All right, Eighth Amendment. This says that you're protected from excessive criminal fines and cruel and unusual punishment. The excessive criminal fines, that's talking about just making sure that the fine is proportionate to the crime. So for example, if you were to steal candy from the gas station, your fine wouldn't be like $100,000 because that would be a ridiculous fine for stealing a candy bar. A more proportionate fine might be like $20 or $30, right? That would be more proportionate. Cruel and unusual punishment means that you can't be tortured for your crime. Some people believe that capital punishment, meaning like the death penalty, violates the Eighth Amendment. Some states have gotten away from the death penalty, like the state of Minnesota. We don't use the death penalty. Other states like Texas and Illinois still use the death penalty. Background, this actually came from a similar right in England. The founding fathers for a lot of these were like, we don't want to be anything like you, England. But this one, they're like, ooh, we actually like this one. We're going to steal it. It came from the Magna Carta, which is their constitution, and that was passed in 1215, so it's super old. If you need more time to write that down, put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. Last one, the 10th Amendment. This says that the states have the powers that aren't listed for the federal government. So the Constitution lays out all the rules and powers of the federal government, and it's like, okay, anything that we didn't cover is going to be the state's responsibility. This was just meant to curb federal power so that way the federal government wouldn't be too powerful, which is something that was really important to the framers because they just got away from a king. All right. Some of you smarty pants might have noticed that we have skipped the 3rd, 7th, and 9th Amendment. They're just not super relevant or used anymore, so we just kind of skipped over those. If you're curious on what they are, the 3rd Amendment just says you can't force individuals to house soldiers. This kind of comes from our background in the Revolutionary War when British soldiers sometimes stayed at colonist house and they were forced to do so. Most of the time it wasn't like you have to have the nicest room in our house. It was like, okay, well, there's a barn out back, make yourself comfortable. All right, the 7th Amendment says that if you are suing someone in court, you have the right to a jury, and that if you are going to sue somebody, it needs to be for at least a $20 value. So you couldn't sue somebody over a Pop-Tart because that would be less than a $20 value, unless that Pop-Tart was like signed by Britney Spears or something. I don't know. All right, the Ninth Amendment says that other people can infringe on your rights or freedoms. This one's kind of covered in the preamble, so we don't really cover that one in this class. All right, once you are all done with your notes, you're going to go ahead and go to Google Classroom, and there are going to be 3 Supreme Court cases. They're going to be super duper short, and it's actually something where you can read it, and it's also got a little play button at the top where you can listen to it if you prefer. Okay, so they're super short, 2 little paragraphs right here, and a little play button if you'd rather listen to it. I chose 3 that I thought you guys would find relevant, like important to your lives, or interesting. So these 3 cases will answer these 3 questions. Is the freedom of speech protected at school? Like, can you say what you want at school? Do schools need a search warrant in order to search a student at school? So in our Bill of Rights, it says that law enforcement needs a search warrant, but it doesn't talk about principals. Does your principal need a search warrant to search your backpack at school? Number 3, is burning of the flag, the American flag, considered free speech and protected under the Constitution? All of those are going to be right here, little podcast, or if you'd rather read them, you can. Once you're finished, you're just going to click on the Supreme Court case poll, and you are going to go ahead and decide whether you agree or disagree with those cases. If you disagree with the Supreme Court, that's okay. The Supreme Court, when they decide a court case, it's not all of the judges agreeing or having to like all agree. They just go by a majority. So even within these court cases, different Supreme Court justices have disagreed with the ruling. So if you disagree with the ruling, that's okay. You're not wrong. Other Supreme Court justices agree with you. And then once you submit it, you'll be able to see everyone else's opinions. This will be anonymous. Like, you just get to see data, how many people voted yes, no, or maybe. All right. Good luck, guys.